SACP General Secretary Solima Paile has told Cosatu's conference this past week that his party is ready to contest 2024 general elections. He adds that the SACP needs to hold an urgent meeting with the governing ANC. For more on this of course, getting a sense of where the tripartite alliance is right now, we're joined by one of the partners, SACP spokesperson Dr. Alex Mashilo is our guest tonight. Dr. Alex, good evening and thank you very much for your time and for joining us here on In Focus. I know it's been a tight schedule, busy for you with some launch of your program that is starting, which you were launching in Limpopo. We'll talk about the program in a moment. But let's talk about this urgent meeting. Some reports are indicating that this meeting happened sometime on Thursday between yourself, Cosatu, and the president following what took place this past week at the 14th Congress of the ANC, of Cosatu, rather, I beg your pardon. And I look at it and I'm saying, but surely it can't be that the president only saw this happening this past week. It's been a long time coming that there has been this dissatisfaction within the alliance itself. I mean, what in your own assessment would have made the president jump so quickly to say, no, we need to have a meeting, as opposed to having had this meeting a long time ago?
Now, firstly, let's make a correction. A meeting of the alliance that took place on Thursday was on a different item altogether. However, that meeting was preceded by a bilateral session between the SACP and the ANC. And of course, the SACP did also meet with Cosatu ahead of that. There were two key items on the agenda of the consultative process that took place before Thursday. One, importantly, is for the alliance to convene an economic and energy policy summit. We discussed that with the ANC. Immediately thereafter, we held a secretariat meeting to discuss this proposal as the SACP, the ANC, and Cosatu. There is a process which is led by the ANC Secretary, the ANC Treasurer General, who is also leading the office of the Secretary General of the ANC, Paul Mashilo, working together with the SACP General Secretary, Solima Paile, and of course the newly elected Cosatu General Secretary will form part of guiding that process towards an alliance economic and energy policy summit. So the meeting that took place on Thursday was dealing with a different matter. But right. What happens is when the alliance meets, we obviously look at the political situation, and that given the meeting was a one-item meeting, there was not enough time to look at other things. So time has been set aside to deal with the questions that our General Secretary Solima Paile raised, to look at the resolutions of the National Congress of the SACP and the National Congress of Cosatu.
Yeah. Be that as it may, the Cosatu gathering has certainly sparked this conversation again, where Cosatu was voting on the matter on whether or not the SACP should be appearing on the ballot come 2024. Is this the signal that the SACP has been waiting for? Because you keep saying, well, we must first assess on the ground what the feeling is. You don't just go at it. We tested it before in a smaller kind of case, whether or not we must put our names on the ballot at a local government level. But we want to basically test the appetite, whether there is such a support for the idea. Is this a signal that you've been waiting for?
Thanks very much for actually mentioning the Metsimaholo situation, and partly that is what Cosatu Congress was dealing with. In 2019, when the SACP contested elections in Metsimaholo, it was working together with the communities in Metsimaholo while Cosatu was supporting the ANC. That was because Cosatu did not have a resolution to support an SACP electoral contest or an electoral contest in which the SACP, together with other left formations and Cosatu, worked together. So, in part, that is what Cosatu was dealing with. The main question was, should that type of a situation occur again? Would Cosatu repeat the stance it adopted in Metsimaholo, or will it take a fresh stance? That was the question. And this related to this question is the effort that the SACP together with Cosatu have been leading to restructure the alliance, and we use the word reconfiguration of the alliance to renew the alliance, to strengthen it so that it can work as a united force in decision making and in leading our joint strategy that we call the National Democratic Revolution.
Yeah.
These two questions are interrelated. So in part, Cosatu was responding to that. But again, Cosatu was responding to other developments. You would know that the government entered into a collective bargaining agreement with public service unions in 2018, only honored that agreement in 2018 and 2019, and reneged from that agreement in 2020. There is a multiplicity of issues that the Congress was dealing with. As the SACP, we appreciate the resolution taken by Cosatu, because the SACP is not a party only of its leaders and members, it is a party of the working class. It is a party, therefore, that cannot go it alone like liberal parties do. As a working class party, the SACP has to ensure that every step that it takes is with and for the workers and poor, because it is a working class party. So that discussion by Cosatu was a necessary part of the consultative process. So it is important we unite the rest of Cosatu behind it, and we go out to build wider unity with other worker organizations. This, we believe, will also contribute in reconfiguring the alliance.
So would you say that's those two things, or maybe there are more, you'll tell us, are the reason why the alliance is tethering on the brink of collapse? One is the seriousness with which the ANC is taking the reconfiguration of the alliance. Two, the neglect of the working class via the bargaining council agreement of 2018, which has not been fulfilled by government. Maybe one would also cite the question of the economic policy or the economic posture of the country, the neoliberal economic posture of the country, which has always been a challenge for the SACP. Would you say those are the three things which are deal breakers for you to say now this would be the reason why we would take the decision of going at it by ourselves?
Thank you for mentioning the neoliberal policies. So, in terms of the new program, we adopted as the SACP in mid-July at our 15th National Congress. We said the reconfiguration of the alliance cannot be narrowed to new organograms of the alliance or how many times the leadership structures of the alliance should meet. We came together as the alliance because of shared strategic perspectives and guided by a shared program, which was consolidated in the form of the Freedom Charter. Now, as part of the reconfiguration of the alliance, there has to be a commitment to roll back the neoliberal policy prescriptions that are well known worldwide to be driven by imperialist-dominated institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, and also the OECD. And it is important that we explain why we are referring to the OECD. In 2019, the Alliance agreed on an election manifesto. May, we went to the elections. In August of that year, the National Treasury released a paper subtitled Towards the Economic Strategy for South Africa. That paper, one, was a blueprint of the prescriptions made by the OECD. One of those prescriptions was that South Africa must weaken the administrative extension of collective bargaining agreements to non-parties. And we had to look at what the government did thereafter. So the attitude that we read of the government in relation to the public service collective bargaining agreement could not be understood independently from that provision in the National Treasury paper, although through engagement within the alliance, that provision was removed. However, other prescriptions made by the OECD were carried forward. Remember that these were consolidated in 2019. That is before COVID. After COVID, those neoliberal policy prescriptions became the heart of what today you call the Reconstruction and Recovery Program. And when that happened, the alliance had agreed to move together in producing a unifying economic policy perspective. So that didn't happen. The process that took place instead was that of the ANC Economic Transformation Commission and NEDLEC, leaving the alliance outside, except for the partners that participate at NEDLEC, moving forward to consolidate what was produced before 2019 into the core of what would be called the Reconstruction and Recovery Program after COVID in 2020. So the whole issue of rolling back neoliberal policy prescriptions has become the heart of what should happen for the alliance to reconfigure, because you do not reconfigure organizationally without a purpose. The purpose must be to roll back neoliberal policy prescriptions and replace them with national democratic revolutionary policy measures. In that way, we would have reconfigured the alliance, not only in terms of some organograms and the number of times we need to meet, but also in terms of a program. That program has to deal with these high levels of unemployment. We are sitting with approximately 12.3 million people who are unemployed. That program has to deal with the problem of poverty. It has to deal with the problem of inequality. By the way, not only were the successive colonial and apartheid regimes and global capitalist crises responsible, together with state capture, for the load shedding that we face today. Neoliberal economic policies brought about by the World Bank, in terms of which South Africa did not invest in new power generation capacity, delivered us into the load shedding that we face today.
Yeah. Dr. Alex, we're out of time, but a quick one. You're covered in a sea of red, partly because you were launching the Red October program. Give me one or two, not in details, what you're going to be focusing on in this Red October campaign.
Land, food, and work.
Land, food, and work, and that has been a program though that you've been with for a very long time. Why do you think you have not been able to deliver on those key things?
These programs were not consolidated as a single program in the past. You will remember that in the mid-2000s, the SACP led the first biggest land campaign in post-apartheid South Africa. That campaign culminated in a shift from the so-called William Buyer, William Seller, which is not even in the Constitution of the Republic. We are quite happy today that last week the Parliament adopted an expropriation bill, which we have been calling for. So what this program is doing is to link land, food, and work. And deliberately we are using the word work because we believe that looking for capitalists to employ workers in a job relationship will not overcome unemployment. So what we need to do is to pursue productive alternatives outside the exploitative job relations, in terms of which people can organize co-ops, people can be self-employed, people can farm, people can do things on their own without the involvement of capitalist forces.
We appreciate your time as always. Thanks so much for coming on. The spokesperson of the SACP there, Dr. Alex Mashilo.